This is Atlantic Public Radio. From Oceania, this is quiet and inobtrusive. I am Ananda Iyer. This is the 200th anniversary of February 15th, PW Year Zero, Day Zero, the day the Earth met the universe. As usual on Q&U, we find literature and audiobooks which enlighten and calm. This week will be devoted to a few stories and important people from the day the world changed. This reading is an excerpt of Dreamer, the PW Year 114 biography of David Rodriguez by Eric Tikra. This is brought to you by Gaiso Cola, the drink of every millennia, the Cosmic and Travel Board, See Everything Twice, and to the gracious endowment of the Atlantic Oceanic Pact, and listeners like you. Born on June 1, 1985 OC to Rosita and Cristobal Rodriguez, David Rodriguez grew up in old California, U.S. in a city called Santa Ana. He stated proudly that before the age of 33 he had never gone further than 25 miles from his home. Dave, as he was most often called, said that his view of our world was most shaped by his mother and her regular morning greeting, "Nobody gives a shit. If you want to sleep, get your ass out of bed." And even with this repeated warning, sleep he did for his entire early adulthood. David would spend his first 30 years drifting from obligation to obligation, never cognizant of the opportunities of life, opportunities which he would avoid at all costs. Adventure, he said, was the plague of his life, a never-ending supply of horror and sadness behind every turn. This fear was not unfounded, however. Every time the young David Rodriguez would venture away from his deep and unendingly guilty Catholic upbringing, he would come to regret it. After a dentist appointment at the age of 14, still under a haze of enjoyable anesthesia, his school newspaper would end up printing an editorial of his detailed description of every sexual thought he could think of. At 18, after drinking for the first and only time, he would awaken sans pants in a flood channel at 3 in the morning. At 21, the accidental intake of a marijuana brownie on a gaming weekend playing Dungeons and Dragons with his friends would end with the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Division of the old U.S. government involved. In love, unfortunately, he was no better. His first love-making experience with a lady would end with her angry boyfriend and a broken femur. And so it went. Life was something to be avoided, dangerous by its very existence. In David's younger years, before leaving Earth, he was ironically obsessed with the writings of S.J. Plunkett, an adventure and travel writer only famous for being outed as a fraud who, like Dave, never traveled. These writings would travel with him, comforting the frightened young man, and one excerpt in particular stuck with him. I cried much on the lonely road to New Orleans with the quietude of ponderosa pines in the bayou, sequoias with orange leaves dying in the sun as we all do, falling to the ground, left behind only to entertain others. No French Quarter, with its excited idiots and its loud, gravity-soaked breasts, could ever compare. The road is quiet, and it is everything. An exciting quote, to be sure, though 5 years after it was written, S.J. Plunkett would be exposed as a man who had never gone near Louisiana or breasts in his life. A failure like his accidental protégé. David lived so worried about failure, he would assure its presence. As an occupation, he tried sports writing where his natural honesty would fail him, ending with a stabbing by a Raiders fan. Leaving this for sales where misinterpreting the oft-used take care of people would end in a firing due to David telling people regularly where they could find things cheaper. Kicked out of his military recruiter's office, fired from volunteering, and so on and so on. Finally, he would find his way for a short while as a nurse, and by his own admission, David would actively avoid living for 5 solid years. No dating, no having fun. He would slowly and carefully save $4,200, play video games, buy a negligently inexpensive car. No dating, no having fun. And this would be every accomplishment he had ever accumulated by the age of 33. Living with his plan to simply continue working until death. Then, as David's co-worker and friend, the great orator and statesperson Bethany Ojeda would say, "The world fell, and no one could pick it up again. This is how it was meant to be, until it wasn't." On the next episode of Quiet and Unobtrusive, David Rodriguez meets ex-wrestler Hezekiah Lafitte and changes as the world falls.